Good morning, everyone. I will now call the hearing to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. This morning, I will be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. On my direct left is Ms. Stevens. On my far left is Mr. Upton. Representing the Assessment and Taxation Department, City of Winnipeg, is Mr. Valderrama. And our secretary today is Ms. Harrison. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket. Today, the session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible, as information about public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. And please, can everybody put their cell phones on complete silence? Could you swear in the parties, please, Kelsey?
Could you please state your name?
Ryan Valderrama.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Can you please state your name?
Trevor Smith.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Good
Mr.
morning.
Valderrama.
Morning.
Our first property on the docket today is 1029 Corden Avenue. We're dealing with a 2020 realty appeal. When you're ready, Mr. Valderrama.
The first property has a file number of 19-1651. It has a roll number of 12030327000. It is located at 1029 1029 Corridon Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The property is assessed at $873,000. Has one building, 2 stories, and an actual year built of 1986. Has a zoning of residential multifamily, a land area of 9,074 square feet, and a planned area of 3,697 square feet. It has a gross floor area of 7,394 square feet. And on page 3 are some aerial photos of the subject property. On page 4 are maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and the second one is the map of the comparable rents in relation to the subject property. On page 5 is the income valuation summary. The average monthly rent per unit is $826.98. It has 8 units. It has a vacancy rate of 1.8%. An expense ratio of 50.72%, giving it a net operating income of $38,419. Using the capitalization rate of 4.4%, the capitalized income is $873,159, and all parameters are all model driven. On page 6 are the rent comparables. There are 3, and they're all row housing. And they're all ranging from $906 to $1,218 average monthly rent per unit. And on page 9 until page 11 is the 2017 income and expense information for subject property. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, just some general ones to start with. The valuation for subject property here is all model driven?
Yes, all parameters are model derived.
Okay, and just again, in general, given workload, have you had the opportunity to view any of the properties on the docket today?
No, I wasn't able to. Those prices were up.
Okay, thank you. So, looking at the valuation on page number 5, I see that the capitalization rate that's applied to this property is 4.4%. Can you give us a bit of detail as to how that would have been arrived at?
First, I believe this is due to the fact that the age is at 1986, smaller area or smaller number of units, and location. Those are the three that determine the cap rate as far as I know.
Okay, condition would not be considered in that study, I'm assuming.
I'm not sure. I don't have that information.
Okay. So I'm looking at page number 7 and the City of Winnipeg cap rate breakdown for multifamily. So the full range is a low of 4.0 to a high of 7.3.
That's correct.
And the 20th to 80th percentile is 4.9 to 5.3. So at 4.4, we're really close to the bottom here for the subject property. And that's largely driven by the age and location, I gather.
Age, location, and the size of it.
Okay. Those are my questions. Sorry, I'll do this once. The model that the city has, capitalization rates, can you describe how the city, what information the city uses in deriving their cap rates? How do they determine the cap rates that get included in the model?
It's on page 7. The first paragraph, I believe, is.
So the second paragraph there?
First and second, yes.
Okay.
The first two.
So in reading the second paragraph, it says, and again, forgive me, I'll do this once. It says, for 2020, cap rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were then time adjusted to April 1, 2018. So if I read that correctly, the cap rates that were included in the city's study on properties that sold wasn't the actual capitalization rate from that property that was derived. It was model-generated income against a time-adjusted sale price. Is that correct? So it's not an actual cap rate derived from that particular sale that's included in the study, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair. And if
Okay.
I may continue on that one, this last sentence of the second paragraph, we are in line or we are within the standards of IAAO.
So that's a very good point, and I unfortunately did not bring my paragraph on that from the IAAO ratio study. I presented it last week. And here we sit today without it in my brief because we published this before that. The IAAO ratio study standard excludes properties that have substantially changed post-sale. So if a property was purchased and then renovated, where the suites were upgraded, et cetera, and the income changed for the property, the IAAO standard on ratio studies, as referred to here, specifically indicates that those properties are meant to be excluded from the study. Do we know? It's my understanding that those properties are still included in the study. Is that correct?
I'm not sure
And
what
you may
the-
not know,
what
as you're
they're-
not in the
no,
modeling
no.
department.
I am not aware of, or I don't have the information with me regarding what were included and what were excluded. As far as I know, we take the sale as it is, whether they were renovated or not in the future. We have, I don't think it's within our procedure to, when we took them as the sale as it is, whether they were renovated or not in the future, or changed, or whatever was done. We have already used that time of sale.
So, and again, we'll just do this once. So the cap rates for properties that were purchased for immediate renovation, essentially, with change to the structure, change to the income, change to the return to the investor, cap rates were derived from those at time of sale, as described here with the model generated net operating income and the time adjusted sales.
Again, when they were sold, we have no information whether they will be renovated or not, or demoed, or whatever change will happen on a specific sale or property that's sold. So
Right.
it is being used as it is, and whether they were adjusted, it's only because of time, not because they were changed, or they were demolished, or they were renovated, or anything.
And that's fair. At the time of sale, you don't have that information, but does the city go back and review those sales to see if the properties were then renovated and have their income stream changed, and then remove those properties from the study?
I'm not sure, I don't know.
Okay, and I understand that you're not in that department, and it's a difficult question to answer. Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Cynthia, any questions of the assessor?
No, I don't think I do, thank you.
Thank you. Bob, any questions?
How did you derive the average monthly rent of $826.98?
That's, as I mentioned, that was model driven. Or
That's model driven, eh?
Yes, it is.
So it's not with
It's a-
reference to your comparables at all?
With
Just
reference.
they're just back up to your,
It's basically telling, showing that we are in line with what's in the market. If you've noticed that it is lower than the lowest within the range, that's because it is a below average market rent,
okay.
which is typical for row housing, or rental housing, or co-op housing for that matter.
Okay, so it comes from the model. Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bob. Just to confirm, the rents, actual rents charged are based on ability to pay in this building?
I think so, yes, for housing.
I'm looking at the income and expense statement.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
so there's a line there that says that, yes, that's
Okay.
correct, Mr. Chair.
And, so this is 8 units, and, I guess your photo of the subject property, I don't think we see the front of it.
Page 3, the bottom, I think is the
Oh, okay.
front.
Yeah, so it's, so is it like,
I don't think there's a parking lot or anything.
there's parking at the back
At
lane?
the back, yeah, but at the front, there's none.
Right. Okay, so that's the street view, and we're just west of Harrow Street, and there's a fence dividing the front yard, so I assume that there's 4 suites on each floor, or would that be it, with entrances on each corner, or each side maybe?
I'm not sure if the entrances where they are, but I'm assuming yes, 4 per.
4 per floor. Okay.
Yes, that's correct,
Mr. Smith, when you're ready, please.
All right, pardon me. So 1029 Corridon Avenue is a Manitoba housing property. Pardon me. Originally developed in 1986, and of course Manitoba Housing's mandate is to provide affordable housing to low-income families and persons in the community that require that. They do operate on a rent geared to income basis, so the revenue generated from these properties isn't to be relied on to determine market value, as it will be on the low side, of course. So our challenge is to develop a market value and rental amounts that are reflective of what a property like this would achieve in the marketplace. So looking at my page number 3, you can see that we have a chart at the top, gives you a bit of a description of the subject property. There are a total of 8 suites, 6 2-bedrooms, 2 3-bedroom units, and the background of the property is shown as far as assessment appeals. In 2018, it was appealed at the Board of Revision and reduced from $760,000 down to $576,000. We're now looking at a 52% increase from that level up to the $873,000. That's well beyond a normal increase in the marketplace and just not supportable. The condition of the property is certainly below average. Built in '86, hasn't been updated since that time, except where breakage occurs. As with many or most Manitoba housing properties, you tend to have a greater degree of wear and tear on the interiors of the units, and we can see that in the photos as we go through. Many of the interior and exterior finishes are in need of replacement and have outlived their economic life. So looking at page number 4, you can see some exteriors. There's entries on both the front, the rear, and the sides to the individual units themselves. The interiors, you can see the one unit we're looking at here has had some paint done in a particular room at the front, but what I draw your attention to more is the finishes. So your flooring is original, carpeting, paint is generally worn and chipped. It's of its vintage, and you're seeing some evidence of the wear and tear as described. So moving on, property, yes, it is located on Corridon west of Harrow. However, it is in the condition that it's in. So looking at our valuation piece, I'll be efficient here. We are in agreement on on the rent for the subject property, so we won't go through that particular point. With regard to vacancy for the subject property, if you look at page number 11, we've presented the CMHC statistics. Pardon me. For Winnipeg regarding vacancy, subject property would fall within the Fort Rouge area. 2 bedrooms in that area have a average vacancy at the end of 2017 of 2.6% with an overall vacancy rate of 2.5%. This is pretty standard across the board in the market. They don't have a specific 3-bedroom vacancy. We've applied 2.5% in our vacancy based on the market stats. The expense allowance is shown on page 12. We do have a discrepancy there. As with all our properties, we go through an exercise of looking at the actual expenses for the property and stabilizing them using a 3-year history. So if you look at page number 12, you can see the individual expense amounts as itemized by Manitoba Housing in their submissions for the years March 31, 2016, 17, and 18, with the actual recorded expenses ranging between $39,000 and $48,000. Now, Manitoba Housing does not necessarily reflect all expenses within their submission. It's a quirk of their method of accounting, and they of course don't charge themselves a property management fee, which any standard market apartment would face in the marketplace. So the few changes that we have made are inclusion of a property management fee for these properties, that being the standard 5% of effective gross income. And of course, we use the actual property taxes for the year ending March 31, 2018. They're probably a bit on the light side as far as some of these categories, but our final expense allowance comes to $47,546. Now, that's not a percentage based, it's based on the actual performance of the property, and it would be unlikely to be significantly different in any way if the property were operated by a different entity. So moving on to capitalization rate, and this is the crux of our valuation issue here today. Yes, we have a property built on Corridon, a total of 8 units. In 1986, the flip side of that is it's original. It's seen significantly more wear and tear than you'll see in the case of a normal market apartment, and there would be significant deferred maintenance if you look at the interior and exterior of the property. If you were to buy this property, there would be money to invest in bringing it up to a market standard. So that is the background to keep in mind. If we look at my page number 13, being an affordable housing, social housing property, of course it's difficult to compare this directly to the market, as it's rare that these properties sell on the marketplace. Certainly they don't sell with capitalization rates, as the rent that they are generating are not indicative of what they might achieve on the marketplace. So there are no means of directly comparing them to sales out there that are specifically the same as them. So further to that, social and affordable housing properties cannot legitimately be directly compared to standard market apartment transactions, as social housing properties have considerable restrictions and burdens that are not present for market apartments. These include rental income restrictions, rental market restrictions, additional operating expenses in many cases. Generally, physical condition is poorer, and there are also disposition restrictions upon theoretical sale of properties such as this. And all of those, pardon me, would have an impact upon the market value of a social housing property. There's an accredited appraiser in the United States named Mr. Richard Poulton. He's accredited by the National Appraisal Organization in the United States. Has his MAI, and he's a bit of an expert in this particular field. He's published a book called Valuation and Market Studies for Affordable Housing. In it he states, developing a market-derived cap rate for an income-restricted property begins with an analysis of the available rates for similar unrestricted properties. Then these rates are adjusted based on the risk factors that an investor would consider in developing a cap rate. The result is a capitalization rate based on market factors and associated risks. In the final analysis, property tax assessment must take into account the public purpose of the project, the overall benefits and burdens, and the restricted nature of the operating rents. So as you can see, he's backing up what I'm stating here. Essentially, there are a number of risk factors that would add a premium to the capitalization rate if you were to buy a property such as this on the marketplace. You have tenants in there that are on a rent geared to income basis. You would not immediately be able to go in there and change the rents on them. They have rights under the law here, and they would continue on. There's no guarantees that you would be able to change that structure in any kind of timely fashion. So it would be certainly a longer-term game if one were to buy a Manitoba housing property with tenants in place, such as this. And that would obviously affect what your purchase price, what you'd be willing to pay for the property would be, and of course, therefore, the capitalization rate that would result. So, moving beyond that, let's look at the marketplace itself. We have presented capitalization rate study in the middle of page number 13. These particular properties were purchased for the in-place income stream. They had already been renovated or were not in need of renovation, so they were achieving their maximum rental rates on the marketplace. There was no potential to buy these, renovate, and increase your income and return. So the actual cap rates that resulted from these sales are indicative of what the market pays for multifamily properties in Winnipeg of a variety. So our cap rate ranges from 5.44% on the low end up to 6.65% for a 28-unit property on Balmoral, sold in 2018. Now, pardon me, the property at 333 Ward is a very good indicator of the premium end of the market. So this would be your investment grade properties. Was built in 2006, so it's a fairly recent build. 103 units, so it's a significant size. Sold in 2016, and we have confirmed with the purchaser that they bought it based on a 5.44% capitalization rate for that subject property. So this is a sophisticated investor. They know what they're doing. They own many properties within the Winnipeg market and outside. It's unlikely that they're going to make a mistake in a purchase of a property of this size. So that would be your baseline, essentially 5.5% at the bottom end for an investment grade property with without upside. So as I'd kind of been inferring when we were discussing capitalization rate with the city, as stated in their brief, in developing their cap rates, they developed their cap rates based on model generated income, so not the actual income of the property itself that is transacted, but their model generated income, so different. And they adjust the sale price to the valuation date. So really, these are not standard methods of developing cap rates. You don't time adjust cap rates, you time adjust direct sale comparables if you're doing something of that nature, but you don't time adjust cap rates. The sale occurs when it occurs based on the income and expenses that are in place. You don't model generate an income and a net operating income and then adjust the sale price. The other aspect the city does is they take into account properties that were sold, then renovated, income significantly increased, and of course then generating an entirely different return to the owner that has purchased it. Those I understand the difficulty of not knowing that they're going to be renovated up front, but certainly due diligence, they can be looked at after the fact, removed from the study, and come up with an accurate picture of what capitalization rates actually are in the Winnipeg market. So, we won't belabor that point, and I won't do it numerous times today. Cap rate studies from the main commercial brokerages that publish cap rate studies in the Winnipeg market. We're looking at 2 years for both Colliers International and CB Richard Ellis. They're essentially stating that cap rates have been flat between the 2016 and 2018 years. If you look at page number 14, low-rise apartments, and again, we're looking at townhomes here, so typically townhomes are going to have higher cap rates than standard market apartments. There's less of them that transact. They have higher expenses, typically greater number of bedroom units, typically, which are less in demand in the marketplace. There's a lot of reasons for it, but typically they would transact at higher caps. So Colliers is indicating low-rise apartments trading between 5.25% and 6% in 2016 and 5% and 6% in 2018. These particular studies from Colliers and CB Richard Ellis are pointing to investment grade properties. So this is a narrow snapshot of the top end of the market. It's not particularly based on any actual sales that happened. It's their investment sales brokers' impression of what is paid for premium grade properties within the marketplace. So that's not what we're looking at today. CB Richard Ellis similarly indicates low rises between 5.5% to 6%. For low-rise A, 5.75 to 6% for low-rise B in 2016, and then exactly the same figures for 2018. So cap rates have not changed in between the 2016 and 2018 timeframes. If you look at the bottom of page number 15, CB Richard Ellis also has a historical chart there for Winnipeg cap rates. The multifamily line is the bottom one. And if you can make that out, you can see that it's essentially remained stable from the 2013 year going forward at roughly 5.5%. We're not seeing change in cap rates. There's not a lot of compression there based on true capitalization rates. So all of this taken into account, we're dealing with a social housing property condition well below average. You've got issues regarding purchase disposition issues, essentially with regard to tenancies going forward and the rights of the tenants to remain in place. I've gone through all of the factors. They're listed there for you on page number 16. We do agree that it is a smaller property, and we have applied, in this case, a 5.75% capitalization rate for that reason. The addendum materials just include the brokerage stats that I had referred to. We've included a couple of decisions. Unfortunately, I haven't included a few more recent ones, but we're looking at three decisions on premium grade or investment grade large-scale apartments in the Fort Garry area. Summerland on University Crescent, one on Pembina Highway, and one on Markham. So all significant properties, and they were all decided before the board here this cycle at a cap rate of 5.5%. So really, that is your bottom end of the cap rate range that should be applied. These 4.4%, etc., are reflective of the city's model that is taking into account properties that should not be considered. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Valderrama, any questions on the appellant's evidence?
Just a question on, on renovation issues. Some buildings being bought and then later on renovated, as mentioned by Mr. Smith. So if a property has been bought at a certain price X, for example, and of course they will, and an intention was made to renovate it, they would apply for an increase for rental, right?
Once
Or rental
renovated, yes.
rates, right, at the RTB or residential tenancies branch, I think, yeah?
Correct. Once it's renovated, they would apply for their increase, yes.
So that will potentially increase NOI, which makes the capitalization rate higher, correct? Which supports your
Absolutely.
argument, right? So, however, aren't we forgetting that if we renovate the property, it would inherently increase its value? If we potentially, what do you call this, renovate the property.
Yes.
So therefore, if we're arguing that, assuming that cap rates stay the same, as mentioned by some of the leading, or leading researchers with regard to real estate, so wouldn't that, if the NOI increased or potential rent increased, then the value should increase, given that the cap rate is the same?
Absolutely. If a property is renovated and the income and NOI increased, absolutely the market value would increase. So, and that's the point with capitalization rates. We're not valuing what the property can become. We're valuing the property as it sits today as of the valuation date of April 1, 2018. So we're not valuing a potential future renovated
Right.
state. We're valuing the property as it sits in the marketplace. That's the basis of the assessment. That's the basis of assessment.
Correct. So, yeah, I have no more questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Cynthia, any questions of the appellant?
I think you touched on this, but I'm just going to, you talked about smaller property, so I'm just trying to get my head around on page 13, the properties you're showing there are all larger in properties, more suites. So how do you see that affecting the cap? Like the lower number of suites?
Right. Typically, with a lower number of suites, there would be more potential purchasers in the marketplace that would be interested and able to handle a purchase of that. So more competition, so a lower.
Lower cap rate,
Right.
okay, thank you. And you had increased the vacancy rate and you showed some numbers too. But in actual fact, the vacancy rate likely in this property would be not very high, correct? They would have a waiting list for people?
Well, as with all, and this comes up every time I do a multifamily presentation, but as with all multifamily properties, there are often waiting lists, but that doesn't mean that it's full all of the time, because people apply to housing and they put down their, top 3 or 5 places that they want to be in, and they get assigned where they get assigned, so they can be on any number of lists. The other thing is there's turnover and renovation, or not renovation, repair time if taps need to be changed or whatever, things that have been broken, etc. So there are gaps there. So with a 8-unit property, I'm not sure how many months on a single unit you would need to have to get 2.5% vacancy. I can work it out, but it would be very tiny. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Bob, any questions of the appellant?
Yes, you said that the average cap rate demonstrated over the last number of years is 5.5%. And you use 5.75. Is that relative to the condition of the building, or why did you choose 5.75?
So 5.5 isn't the average, it's the kind of, it's the baseline, it's the maximum that you're seeing paid for investment grade properties. I used 5.75 for a number of reasons. Conditions certainly, the issues regarding, regarding social housing as far as rental income restrictions, you can't immediately change that, that rent that goes in there. So any market participant buying it would face tenants that have the right to remain there for the term of their lease on the basis that they're paying, so well under market. And then there would be issues with regard to them leaving, etc. Balancing that, we have an 8-unit apartment on Corydon. So, you know, there's those issues, and then there's the fact that it's smaller and it's on Corydon. So for those reasons, I'm at 5.75 rather than higher.
Can I just throw a quick question?
Of course.
Mr. Smith, if I just heard you mention that a cap rate adjustment is needed when there's something with a condition, correct? You just mentioned condition. Is it a physical condition
Yes.
of the property? So wouldn't that fall under repair and maintenance? Just wondering. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that should fall under repair and maintenance if there is a condition issue, physical condition issue on the property.
Well, there is repair and maintenance, obviously, if we look at the R&M for the property. So we have a stabilized expense amount based on 3-year history of just over $12,000 on a 8-unit property. So what is that on a
1.5 per unit?
12,000, sorry, your mental math is better than mine. Comes out to roughly $1,500 per unit, which is very standard within the marketplace. So that's already being spent on it,
So that addresses
which
the
is
physical
which is
condition.
indicative of the greater wear and tear that happens in these Manitoba housing properties.
Okay, so that addresses the physical condition of the property, thereby shouldn't be put on cap rate. Would that be correct in assuming that, or not really?
No, so as you can see from the photos and my description having been there, it's in below average condition, even with them spending $1,500 per unit per year on the property. So it's in the condition it is, despite spending a normalized amount on repair and maintenance. So no, I would disagree.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Bob, were you done?
No, I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for interrupting.
No problem.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Smith, my only question is, actually to both parties, so we're basically in the Crescentwood area here. I think you called it Fort Rouge, but we're on Corydon, just off Harrow. The rental, you've agreed with the assessor's model rate of $827, and I'm just wondering, in your opinion, whether for 2 and 3 bedroom units in the Crescentwood area, $827, do you think that's low for the market for rent?
And I did accept it for a reason. I think it's indicative of the condition of what you're renting there, right? So,
Okay.
and this comes up with Manitoba housing all the time, because they have units in St. Vital and St. James and everywhere, right? East Kildonan. But generally, they're in much poorer condition than the neighboring market apartment right beside them. So what is it going to rent for? It's going to rent for less.
Okay, okay. But I think when we look at your cap rate comparisons, probably this is a superior location to many of them. Would that be fair?
To the specific sale comps that cap rate comps that I provided there. Certainly it would be superior to a number of them. I wouldn't say it would be superior to, say, Ward Avenue, located at the corner of St. Mary's or St. Anne's, right? And they're at that 5.5 roughly baseline that we're talking about. So that combined with the issues I've talked about in the condition, that's why we're at 5.75.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Valderrama, any requirement for summary?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Smith, are you good? Okay. And you made arguments, presented the evidence on the cap rate study from the city, so we'll carry those, or consider those forward.
Of course,
okay?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the first one at 1029 Corridon Avenue. Next property is 515 Meadowwood. We're dealing with the 2020 realty assessment. And Mr. Valderrama, when you are ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-750. It has a roll number 080046410000. It is located at 515 Meadowwood Drive. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020, using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The property is assessed at a total of $8,517,000. It has a two-split classification and liability. One is 80T, or 80 taxable, and the other one is 40E, 40 exempt. The 80 taxable is assessed at $8,097,000, and the 40E exempt is assessed at $420,000, for a total of $8,517,000. It has 11 buildings, 1 to 4 stories, and it is it was built in 1989. It has 73 suites with a 90 outdoor parking spots, and it is zoned as residential multi-family. The land area is 169,154 square feet. The planned area is 35,191 square feet, and a gross floor area of 81,988 square feet. On page 3 are the pictures of the subject property. And on page 4 are maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and the next one is the map of the comparable rents, or comparable rents in relation to the subject property. On page 5 is the income valuation summary. The property has 73 units, has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,033.75, which is model driven. There are two income streams. The first one is the apartment stream. It has a vacancy rate of 2.6% and an expense ratio of 54.10%, giving it a net operating income of $404,847 and a capitalization rate of 5%, giving it a capitalized income of $8,096,940. The next one is a retail income stream, has a vacancy rate of 6%, a shortfall rate of $6.5, and an expense of 2%, giving it a net operating income of $28,975, with a capitalization rate of 6.9%. It has capitalized income of $419,928. On page 6 are some rent comparables for row housing. There are 3, and they're all ranging within $1,206 or $1,206 up to $1,225 average monthly rent per unit. And on page 9 to page 10 is the 2017 income and expense information. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
I do. So the cap rate applied here to this property is 5%. And I see that in the model from the city in the 2018 assessment year, So in the last cycle, we had a cap rate of 6% being applied by the city to the subject property. We're now looking at 5% for 2020 for the next cycle. Is there any explanation from the city with regard to a drop of 1% in capitalization rate?
I'm not sure of the previous cap rate, Mr. Chair, I don't have that information with me. And that's, I'm not sure if it was even model driven or a decision by the board or however
It was the model that I'm referring to.
So I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, I don't know.
Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions of the assessor?
I'm just, the exempt portion, is that office space or for Manitoba Housing or?
Ma'am, it's a non-profit daycare.
Oh, it's a nonprofit daycare, thank you, okay.
Thank you.
I think that's it, thank you.
Bob, any questions?
And the cap rate you derived from your page 7, I gather? Multifamily high-rise? No, pardon me, it would be low-rise, eh?
For the multifamily, it will be, it doesn't delineate anyways. So we have a range between 4 to 7.3,
Yeah.
which is the collection of all the cap rates that we have. That's the range that we have.
So that doesn't get that category, so you're saying it's got, in this case, 5%.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Ryan, do you have the blended cap rate between the two?
I can quickly calculate that. Sorry, I wasn't able to.
I know it's a small portion, but, yeah.
The blended cap rate between which?
Between the two cap rates used on the apartment and the retail.
Oh, I see.
We've got 6.9 and 5, although it's only a small portion, but.
It's roughly about 5.1,
Oh, okay.
5.0936, yeah.
Okay, 5.1, okay.
5.1.
Basically 5, okay.
Almost, yes.
And the retail portion, the daycare, that's just, you're using, is it $6 a square foot, or how do you calculate that, by the way?
Yeah, I wasn't able to include that. I wasn't able to include that, that information. So,
That's just a model of a daycare? Is that what?
Model of
Where the value comes from?
I think it's a retail, yeah, model retail rent.
Model retail, right, okay. Yeah.
So not specifically to daycare?
No, not specifically.
Okay, okay. And the cap rate is related to retail also?
That's correct, sir.
All right. Okay, and how many square feet is that, do you know, that daycare?
Figure out from, it's not.
Approximately.
It's not. I wasn't able to include that one, so I would assume it's a 1 unit.
Yeah.
But,
Without having seen Mr. Smith's presentation,
No,
I don't know if he's challenging that anyway, so we'll just leave it at that.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair.
No, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, so 515 Meadowwood Drive. This is Village Canadian Cooperative. It's a housing cooperative. They have 2 sites within the city, this one and our next property on the list is 700 River, both of them in St. Patel. 515 Meadowwood is on my page number 1. We have some detail to go through there. It was built in 1989 And it is actually a combination of, pardon me, combination of an apartment, standard apartment building of 4 stories, so low-rise, and then the townhouse accommodation, which is the vast majority of the site. And in addition, as part of the housing co-op, they did build a building that was intended for use as a daycare for the residents of the cooperative itself. So that's the purpose of it, and what it is used for. And we're not disputing the value of the daycare portion whatsoever. Looking at my page number 1, you can see the assessment history of the property and the reductions gained. Going back to 2012, there's been significant reductions. 2016, we were looking at reduction on on the multi-res portion from 9.9 million to 6.9 million. In 2018, the reduction that was achieved at the Board of Revision wasn't reflective of market value, so we have subsequently appealed that to the municipal board, and we're awaiting scheduling on that result. That result was at $7,367,000 for the multifamily portion. And subsequently, we've seen an increase from that level for 2020. The bottom of the page, you can see a bit more description. We have 3.9 acre site. The apartment portion of the property is comprised of 8 one-bedroom units, 16 two-bedroom units, and 7 three-bedroom units. And then the balance of the property is townhomes at 36 3-beds and 6 4-bedroom units. So significantly skewed towards the larger number of higher bedroom units. Looking at the photos, you can see the finishes on the interior of the suites. They, again, are dominantly from that date of construction in 1989. There's been really no interior renovation since that time. Basements are not developed for the property, etc. So it's of its vintage and basically in average condition for that time frame. The site is shown on my page number 10. The apartment building fronts on Meadowood, as well as the daycare building with the townhomes shown in behind. Important thing to note here, significant size of the site and the fact that we're looking at townhomes here. There's, and I did not, I think, note how many individual townhome buildings there are here, but a significant number of them. Now each of those townhome units has its own roofing system. They each have their own hot water tank, furnace, etc. So there's a lot of repair and maintenance that would go into townhomes versus apartments. You also have the exterior maintenance as well as the site itself. So you have to plow all of that snow away, mow all of the lawn, etc. So all of that combined, you tend to have higher expenses for properties such as this. Property is shown on page number 11 as far as the location. Then we can get into the the valuation itself. The market rental structure that they have is shown on page number 13. I provide market rent comps sorry, for this on the following page, as well as CMHC's market rent reports on page 15 for both apartments and townhomes. Suffice it to say, we're at market. Our rents are actually above what the city is estimating for the property. And they come in at an average of $1,057 per month. So again, we are above what the city is estimating for the property in this cycle. Parking income is added to the property, as well as the laundry revenue from the apartment building. The expense side of the equation, as you'll note here, the city's applying a 2.6% vacancy rate, I believe, which is in line with what we're seeing on the market, and we've applied the same. In the last one, they were at 1.8 or something like that, but here we have a 2.5% vacancy, 2.6 rather, in keeping with the market. The expenses, as I discussed, we've stabilized them using the 3-year history at the bottom of page number 17. So this is the actual performance of the building. We've removed anything that would be extraneous to the real estate operation. And you can see that we come down to a total expense amount of $509,355 based on this. We've added in a property management amount, removed a significant salary and benefit portion that would not be applicable to operating the site as it is. And by and large, we're looking at 3-year averages where it makes sense if there's no common trend to the expenses going up or down. Capitalization rate. We have gone through this significantly. Again, we see 5.5% as being the baseline for investment grade properties in the marketplace. We're looking at a housing cooperative here with residents that would have the right to remain in place going forward under RTV. We do not see a change in the marketplace. Capitalization rates are remaining flatlined, and the same information with regard to the commercial brokerage caps are presented there, as well as our own capitalization rate study presented on page number 18. I won't go through that again in detail. What I will point out, and if you flip to my page number 22, we have presented our analysis for 2020 side by side with the City of Winnipeg's analysis for 2020. Side by side with City of Winnipeg's analysis for 2018. So keep in mind, these are the model-driven estimates by the city. So comparing 2020 to 2018, they've dropped their rent considerably, increased the expense ratio. So obviously the result of this is a lower NOI, bringing it in actually under what our net operating income is based on the actuals. And then we have a 1% drop in capitalization rate from 6% in 2018, model driven, to 5% for 2020. There really is no explanation for this. And if I look at the decisions that I have from this cycle, which I've brought with me today here for other Manitoba housing as well as other housing cooperatives within the city, I do a significant number of housing cooperatives in the city. In fact, the majority of the bigger ones. We're getting 6% decisions on these properties across the board, essentially. Our capitalization rate that we've applied, forgive the typo on page number 21, we've applied the same 6% capitalization rate that we did in the last cycle as well as the city. So our net operating income, higher revenue, greater expenses, slightly higher net operating income. The capitalization rate to be applied to this is 6%. 5.5 being the baseline for good investment grade property without upside. The 6% to be applied to a property such as this. And again, As I mentioned, I'm looking at decisions on property at, Manitoba Housing property at 130 Tuxedo Avenue at 6% for 2020, 11 Dorset at 6% for, for 2020, which had, also had a 6% model cap rate for it. 81 Tyndall, another cooperative at 6% capitalization rates. 355 Sutton, Manitoba Housing property, decided at 6% in East Kildonan. And unfortunately, these were not available to include in the material that I presented today. And then we have West Point Housing Cooperative at 10 Shelmerdine, just off of Roblin in the the Charleswood area. Again, decided at a 6% capitalization rate. We're in keeping with the marketplace as well as the decisions. So using our 6% cap, we come to a market value of $7,227,000 with the institutional remaining the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
No questions from Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
No, I don't think I do, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bob, any questions?
None for me, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Smith, I'm just gonna ask for some clarification here. You just bear with me 1 second, please. Okay. First of all, you accept the $420,000 for that daycare?
I do.
Portion, that would be class code 40 exempt. We have to split it up for,
Yeah.
for a decision. So, on page 22, I guess, the numbers that you represented there don't include on the city side or your side the $420,000?
No, as we were accepting it, I didn't
Okay.
present any
Okay.
material regarding it.
So just to confirm, your value would be $7,227,000 plus $420,000 class code 40 exempt would equal $7,647,000.
In total, yes, and
In
if you look
total,
at my
okay.
page 23, I've broken it out as to institutional
Ah, there we are, okay,
and
I missed that
residential,
one, okay,
yeah.
thank you. Okay. Okay. I missed that last page, there we go, okay. Thank you very much. I have no other questions, so that concludes 550 Millwood Drive. I think we'll take a quick break right now.
Sure.
Okay, I will call the hearing back to order. Next property in the docket is 700 River Road. We're dealing with a 2020 Realty Appeal. Mr. Valderrama, when you are ready, please, 700 River Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-749. It has a roll number of 080055555600. It is located at 700 River Road. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The total assessed value for the property is $19,275,000. It has two classifications and liability. The first one has 40E exempt. It has an assessed value of $601,000. And the next one has ATT taxable. It has an assessed value of $18,674,000. There's 4 buildings, 1 to 2 stories. Has an actual years built of 1976 to 77. Has 151 suites, 150 parking spots. It is zoned as residential multi-family with a land area of 526,112 square feet land area of 83,155 square feet and a gross floor area of 162,752 square feet. On page 3 is are the map or aerial photos of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. The apartment income valuation summary has 150 total units, an average monthly rent per unit of $1,080.69. Has a vacancy rate of 2.6%, an expense ratio of 50.72%, giving it a net operating income of $933,691. Using the capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized income for the apartment section is $18,673,820. The next one is the retail income valuation. Has a vacancy rate of 6%, a shortfall rate of $6.5, and an expense rate of 2%, giving it a net operating income of $41,451. Using the capitalization rate of 6.9%, the capitalized income is $600,739. On page 5 are rent comparables. They are all row housing. Their average monthly rent per unit range from $1,206 up to $1,225. On page 6 are the maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and the second one is the map of the comparable rents. On page 9 is the income and expense information for the subject property, and that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
No, I have no questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
The exempt piece, is that a daycare again?
Non-profit daycare.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And by looking at your aerials here, they appear to all be townhomes?
Yes, they're
Yeah,
row
so
housing.
it's all townhome row housing, okay, thank
That's
you.
correct.
That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, any questions?
None for me, thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Smith, I'll ask you now, even though we haven't seen your evidence, are you in agreement with the daycare value?
I'm not.
You're not, okay.
Not on this one.
Okay, perfect, okay, thank you. And that's all my questions. Thank you. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Great, so this is the other Village Canadian Housing Cooperative property in Winnipeg at 700 River Road. This is one of their two sites, this being the larger of the two. If you look at my page number 1, there's some detail here regarding the property. Again, 150 total units. 36 of them 2 beds, 104 3 beds, and 4, or rather 10 4-bedroom units, all of them being townhome units. Property was built in 1976, 77, and important thing to note here is that the property is, sorry, let me just confirm this. Is on leased land from Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation. The MHRC owns owns the land that the property is situated on, and the Village Canadian is the tenant. This is common from when these housing cooperatives were developed, where MHRC, or in some cases City of Winnipeg, had the land and provided it for the development of the housing cooperative as a means of assisting to getting these getting these projects going for social housing in an environment of high interest rates, etc. back in that time frame. So ultimately, Village Canadian is is a tenant on the property, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in detail slightly later. Looking at my page number 1, again, you can see the appeal history for the subject property going back to 2011, and the decisions that that came forward with regard to value on the property from those time frames. In one I would point to, 2016 decision, the multifamily reduction from just over 17 million to roughly 14.9 million for 2016. That exact figure on the multifamily portion was carried forward to 2018 by the city. We did not dispute that or appeal it for 2018. And now we're looking at roughly a $4 million increase on the property, and whatever percentage that would work out to for the 2020 assessment simply on the multifamily side of the equation. This, again, is not reflective of market and is a value above what you would see. So again, we're looking at a housing cooperative property, and a large number of higher bedroom unit counts than one would see in the marketplace. 3-bedroom units are certainly much rarer than 1 and 2 bedroom units in the marketplace. We have a total of 104 of them out of 150, so roughly 2/3 of the property is 3-bedroom units, and then we have 10 4-bedroom units. So it's not that there's no market for these units in the marketplace. Certainly there is, but it's lower than for 1 and 2-bedroom markets, which of course can impact vacancy in a normal market situation. The units are largely original. There has been replacement where required, where things have worn out and or broken. You can see some pictures of the inside. They're not deluxe. It's essentially basic accommodation. Further description is provided on page number 7, and the description is there for you to read. I would generally put these at slightly below average condition in the marketplace for similar comparable properties. The site is shown on page number 9. We have a total of 12 acres here, a little over 12 acres in site. You can see the significant number of individual buildings that we're talking about. So if you look at the number of roofs that would require replacing spread across the number of units that that are present there, obviously significantly more roof work to do with more roofs as a ratio to the number of units. Each unit has its own operating systems of hot water tanks, etc., requiring replacing. And then you have a 12-acre site to maintain, including the driveways, parking, and grounds, etc. So costs are always going to be higher. Going to be efficient on this property here, and let's flip forward perhaps to my page number 22. We can go back and review material as you wish. Our rental income for the subject property, based on the rental rates that they have, as shown on my page 12, we have backed those up. We feel they're at market. We've added the parking income in. We apply the same 2.6% vacancy rate as the city. And we come to an effective gross income of $1,827,586. To this, we have the actual expense actual expenses stabilized for 2018. As shown on page number 17, we can review that if you wish. Deducting the expenses from the EGI, we come to an NOI of $924,025 versus the city's $933,000. 691. So we're close in NOI. Now, again, and I don't have the model here, but I suspect the major difference in the city's valuation is that they have changed their cap rate from 6% in 2018 to 5% in 2020. I don't have that to present to you, but I suspect that is the major difference that we're looking at here. And again, it's producing a $4 million increase on what was a $14.9 million assessment on the multifamily side. That's well beyond market. Our capitalization rate that we have applied to the subject property is 6.25%. Pardon me. This, again, we've gone through the capitalization rate issues. We are in keeping with all of those reasons for the subject property. 3 and 4 bedroom units are not, and townhomes in particular, are not a property type that are significantly in demand on the market for purchase by investors, for the reasons that there's more maintenance to do, there's higher costs associated with it, greater capital to be invested over time, etc. It's not a category that draws a lot of investor interest, therefore the cap rates are also higher. And indeed, if you look at sales on the marketplace, there's very few of these that do transact. So again, we use a 6.25% cap rate, and that derives our final market value of $14,784,000 for the multifamily portion of the property, as shown on my page number 22. With regard to the daycare portion of the property, and I won't go through this in detail, the rental rate applied to the property by the city amounts to $13.07 a square foot. This is certainly, looking at what we have a daycare building on a co-op site off of any retail strip on River Avenue. It's not going to rent for a lot. The comps that we have, which I don't see specifically presented here, indicate in that $10 to $11 range. In fact, there's a few that are lower for daycares. We've used $11 a square foot. And capitalization rate, again, the city's model is producing 6.9. I suspect this is because it's in St. Patel, built in whatever time frame it is, it's spitting out 6.9. You're not going to see anything of that sort on a property like this. We presented our retail cap rates, and these were, again, investment properties that transacted. At the bottom of page 23, we've got a range of 7.1 to 9.1% for investment properties, retail transactions, well located. We're using an 8% cap rate. This gives us $410,000 for the institutional portion of the property. And again, with regard to cap rate, I would point out to the board decisions that I wasn't able to include as they hadn't come out yet. We have a 6% cap rate decision on Manitoba housing property at 130 Tuxedo Avenue, well located. We have another housing cooperative at 11 Dorset, very significant, Willow Park East, decided at a 6% cap rate. That was Willow Park East at 81 Tyndall, decided at a 6% cap rate in this cycle. We have Manitoba housing property in East Kildonan, well located, again decided at a 6% capitalization rate, and probably most applicable and importantly, 10 Shelmerdine, the West Boyne Park Housing Co-op just off of Roblin, decided in this cycle at a 6% capitalization rate. That is my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Valderrama, any questions of the appellant?
Just a clarification question on page 17. There are two salaries and benefits, and then a property management was estimated at 5% of PGI. What are the other two salaries and benefits, and how do they relate to property management? How come they're separate line items?
Well, you have, again, you've got 150 townhome units here in a 12-acre site, so there's obviously maintenance staff as well as an admin staff that is required for a property of this size. And again, I would point out that our expenses actually come in under the city's estimate for the property.
And repairs and maintenance, 3-year average of 70,176, is that correct?
So, 70,000 is,
A 3-year average, right? It's about $465.
it's the
a year.
three-year average, yes,
Okay.
which, well, when
Translates to
I,
465 per unit, correct?
when I look at it, it's extremely low, yes, so yes, it's actually very much on the low side. Perhaps should have been increased, but again, as you've noted, there are some other categories here, so I think on balance, the 903,000 is fair.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
Your rental rate on the daycare portion, so you didn't have any, do you have any rental comps for that?
I do, but they weren't included.
Oh, they're not, okay.
There's one at 276 Colony that was in that $9 to $10 range. There's one on Fort Garry that was similar.
And were the comps retail or were they daycares or?
They were daycares.
They were daycares,
Yeah.
okay.
There's one on Regent that's also in that same range. And we're not looking at them today, but you're
And
not
the-
going to achieve $13 in a
Okay.
space like
And
this.
the same with the cap on that, that was similar, the 8% cap on that one, you were basing that on?
If you look at the bottom of page 23, these are all retail cap rates.
These are
for
retail, okay,
investment.
thank you,
Yeah,
all right. Oh, it says so, I'm sorry.
that's right.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Bob, any questions?
No, I don't think, I think you covered, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions either. Requirement for summary, Mr. Valderrama?
Not at the moment.
Mr. Smith, you okay? Okay, that concludes 700 River Road. Next property on the docket is 91 Eric Street. We're dealing with a 2020 Realty appeal. When you're ready, Mr. Valderrama.
Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-1675. It has a roll number of 004-189-600. It is located at 9191 Eric Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020, using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The property is assessed at $1,361,000. Has one building, 2 stories, and an actual year built of 1973. Has 17 units or suites, 17 outdoor parking. As the property is zoned as residential multifamily. It also has a land area of 39,199 square feet, a planned area of 8,779 square feet, and a gross floor area of 17,157 square feet. On page 3 are the aerial photos of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Has 17 units, as mentioned earlier, and an average monthly rent per unit of $780.36. It has a vacancy rate of 2.6%, an expense ratio of 53.48%, and a capitalization rate of 5.3%, giving it a capitalized income of $1,360,962. On page 5 are 3 rent comparables. They are all row housing. They are ranging from $600 up to $1,695 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6 are maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and then the second one is the map of the comparable rents. From page 9 to page 11 is the 2017 income and expense information of the subject property, and that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Mr. Smith, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
No, thank you, I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, any questions?
None for me, thanks.
Thank you.
And I am good too, thank you. And Mr. Smith, when you're ready.
Okay, so we're dealing with Manitoba Housing property here, 91 Eric Street, located in St. Patel. 17 two-bedroom units, just under an acre in size, originally built in 1973, and of course, Housing's mandate was to provide low-cost housing to families in requirement of that, as well as individuals in the Winnipeg marketplace or in Manitoba. So the property is in St. Patel. It is original to the date of construction, 1973. If you look at the interiors and the fixtures, it's in significant need of repair and replacement, and would be in below average condition, I would state. If you look at photos beginning on page 4, you have some of the exteriors. You can see wood frame. It's around the doors and windows, original flooring, original cabinetry, the wear and tear obviously over that period of time to the very basic finishes in the first place, and kind of the institutional nature of the hallways inside. You can see on page 7 there. Looking, there is no hallway, and that picture at the bottom of page 7, please disregard, as that is not from that building. Should not have been included in that brief, so please pay attention to that. The site is shown on page number 8, as well as the location on page number 9 in the St. Patel area. So what are our differences here? We're in agreement with the rental rate applied to the subject property based on the condition of the property and where it is, etc. We are in agreement with the vacancy rate at 2.6%. Where we differ is in expenses as well as capitalization rate. So, and I think it's important to note the expenses for the property, Manitoba Housing in their accounting, sometimes not everything is included. So there probably are expenses that may be beyond this. However, we're not asking for anything that's not indicated other than a property management fee, which would be applied in any standard market situation to any multifamily property out there. So if you look at my page 12, you can see the 3-year history, the stabilization of it, and you can note that we reduced the R&M to $1,500 a unit for this property. Last one, we were well under market at 500 as actually being spent. The R&M here is 1,500 a unit that we have applied. We've also applied property management fee of 5% of effective gross income. This gives us our expense allowance of $96,653. Looking at the subject property, it is in below average condition. There would be significant money to be spent on R&M to bring it up to a normal market state, not a renovated state. And our comments with regard to capitalization rate for properties such as this remain the same. We're looking at a total of 17 units. While it is in below average condition, it's also located where it is and has a relatively low number of units. For that reason, we're at 5.75% in our cap rate. And this gives us a market value of $1,016,000. And if you look at the addenda, I've included the income and expense, the commercial market brokerage details are there as well. And as with all of the other briefs here today, we have a number of decisions at the back. 3 of these being significant market apartments, and the decisions on these in the 2020 cycle at 5.5% cap rate. 1750 Pembina, 990 Markham, and 77 University Crescent being the Summerland facility there by the University of Manitoba. And we have a couple of decisions on on Manitoba Housing at 6.5% cap rate for larger properties in a lesser location. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Valderrama, any questions of the appellant?
Yeah, just one on page 17. I'm just doing the comparison between our assessment and the analysis done on revenue and expenses. So basically, you are agreeing to the revenue, however, revenue which are all model driven, correct?
Yes, in that
The
case,
revenue
and
side.
we're not doing it because it's model. We're doing it because we feel it is market in comparison to the market.
Yeah, that's okay. And for expenses, you're using the sort of actual / estimate, correct?
We
Based
are
on page 12, right?
yes.
So actuals and a couple of estimates. Average, actual, and a couple of estimates, correct?
Yes. Now, the only estimate is property management, which Manitoba Housing doesn't
Oh.
apply to their properties. We've reduced the R&M and just used the actual property taxes. The others are 3-year averages where it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's, and net operating income went down from ours from 72,131 to 58,401, correct?
Correct.
And it increased, or the capitalization rate increased, or you're requesting an increase from 5.3 to 5.75?
Correct.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Bob, any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
And neither do I. Any requirement for summary?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 91 Eric Street. Next property on the docket is 42 Donwood Drive, and we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Mr. Valderrama, when you are ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-1656. It has a roll number of 04-001-904600. It is located at 42 Donwood Drive. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The property is assessed at $8,435,000. Has 12 buildings, 2 stories, with an actual year built of 1972. Has 66 suites, and an outdoor parking of 66 stalls. It is zoned, or the property is zoned as residential multifamily with a land area of 188,780 square feet, a planned area of 36,900 square feet, and a gross floor area of 110,700 square feet. On page 3 are aerial photos of the subject property. And then on page 5 is where the maps are. The first one, the map of the subject property. And the second one is the map of the comparable rents. Going back to page 4, is the income valuation summary. As mentioned, there are 66 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,245.76. It has a vacancy rate of 2.6%, an expense ratio, of 53.48%, giving it a net operating income of $447,052. With using a capitalization rate of 5.3%, we have a capitalized income of $8,434,943. On page 6, there are 3 rent comparables. They are all row housing. Their average monthly rent per unit ranges from $903 up to $1,400. On page 9 to page 11 is the 2017 income and expense information. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Mr. Smith, any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia, any
No,
questions?
nothing.
Bob, any
No,
questions?
nothing.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, so, looking at 42 Donwood Drive. Again, this is a Manitoba housing property located in East Kildonan. If you look at my page number 3, we have further detail. Built in 1972, 66 total units, and we have a prevalence of higher bedroom count units at this property. 16 2-beds, 33 beds, 14 4-bedrooms, and then 6 5-bedroom units. So certainly we're skewing towards the higher end of the scale as far as number of bedrooms out there. In the marketplace, there is certainly much less demand by investors for properties with 4 and 5-bedroom units as a larger apartment complex. Certainly there's just less demand out there for those. Looking at subject property itself, page 3, originally constructed in 1972. The interior finishes, again, are original to the date of construction, and in this case are in poor condition. If you look at the photos from the property on pages 4 through 8, I guess it is, 4 through 9 rather. This property would be considered to be in poor condition overall. As you go through the photos, you can see good evidence of the many issues that we have here, as well as the original state of the property and the finishes themselves. So that is the state of the property. Moving into the valuation, again, let's be somewhat efficient here. We did, in this case, feel that the income applied by the city was reflective of what it would get on the marketplace. That being representative of the higher number of bedroom units in the property itself, driving that rent. So we're in agreement on the rental income as well as the vacancy. In this case, when we reviewed the expenses, they were very close to what the city was at, so we accepted the expense allowance. So we're in agreement on NOI when it comes right down to that point, which leaves us at cap rate. We have a property in poor condition with a significant amount of money to be spent on it by any purchaser to bring it up to just a normal market standard, not renovated state. And all of our same comments with regard to capitalization rate and properties of this nature hold true. Please keep those in mind. I will again point out the decisions at the back. 5.5% base for investment grade property, up to 6.5 on some other Manitoba housing properties in lesser location. One in particular, I will note here, 355 Sutton Avenue, located just around the corner from this. Another Manitoba housing property was decided based on the evidence that I presented, which was a 6% capitalization rate on that property as well. And it's literally just around the corner from this. This is
What page is that, Jeremy?
It's not actually in here because I
Okay.
received it after, wasn't able to submit it. The, area itself, if you look on page number 11, there's a very high concentration of Manitoba housing immediately around that River East Collegiate area on the Donwood Drive and Sutton roadways. So that's the nature of the place that it's in. So our final valuation on page number 19 is $7,451,000 based on that 6% cap rate, which again is being decided on numerous cases here of similar Manitoba housing properties in this cycle. And that is my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
None at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia?
No, thank you.
Bob?
No, none for me.
And I have none either. Any requirement for summary from either party?
No,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. That concludes 42 Donwood Drive. And last property on the docket today is 150 Furby Street. We're dealing with the 2020 realty assessment. Mr. Valderrama, when you are ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last property on the docket has a file number of 19-1679. It has a roll number of 120906335500. It is located at 150 Furby Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020. Using the reference date of April 1st, 2018, the property is valued at, or assessed at $732,000. Has one building, 3 stories, an actual year built of 1977. Property has 10 suites, 15 outdoor parking stalls. Zoned at residential 2-family, a land area of 16,449 square feet, a plan area of 3,611 square feet, and a gross floor area of 8,885 square feet. On page 3 are some photos. These are aerial photos of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation. As mentioned, there are 10 units for the property. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $657.90. A vacancy rate of 2.6%. And an expense ratio of 55.28%, giving it a net operating income of $34,387. Using the capitalization rate of 4.7%, we have a capitalized income of $731,638. On page 5 are 3 rent comparables. They are all row housing as well. They are all ranging from $906,000 to $1,237 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6 are maps of the subject property and comparable rents. And on page 9 is to page 11 is the 2017 income and expense information. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Any questions, Mr. Smith?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Cynthia?
No, thank you.
Bob, any questions?
Yeah, your lower cap rate here at 4.7, that's because of the area. That's an area from different properties we talked about today.
Area meaning size, yes. It has 10 units, not much
Size.
compared to the other. The others have 151,
Yeah, right.
66, and all those. So, yeah, this one,
So it's primarily the lower,
it was
Size
affected
of
by
the-
the size, yes, correct.
thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one question.
Of course.
You don't have any.
I do not.
Okay. I'm assuming the age is a significant driver of the cap rate for this particular property.
Yes.
So age and, age and number of units essentially is what we're looking at.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, so this is always interesting, and I've had a few other Manitoba housing properties like this. The Manitoba Housing's mandate, of course, is to provide low-cost housing to families in areas where it's needed. So they'll have some in St. Tel and Charleswood and wherever, right? But they will also build in these these neighborhoods where a normal market developer is not going to be erecting a new multifamily development on at 150 Furby. That would be very unlikely. So you run into the case where it doesn't fit the model. You've got a building built in '77 of however many units we're talking about here, 10 units on Furby Street. That would not occur in the marketplace, but because Manitoba Housing has their mandate, as they should, they build in the areas where it's needed. So they've built on this site, and they're now, because it was built in '77 and has a lower number of units, we're now looking at a cap rate of 4.7% being applied to it. That is strictly model, not representative of market in any fashion, and would not be the case for the subject property. Looking at the building itself, page number 3, there's a bit of description. Again, 10 two-bedroom units. It is dominantly from the age of construction, the interior finishes, that is, with replacement where things were damaged essentially, not through any large-scale renovation or anything of that nature. So if you look at the finishes inside, you can see the same flooring as the original. This particular kitchen had some changed cabinets because the others were damaged beyond repair. And you can see the general wear and tear. So it's indicative of its area and its Manitoba Housing nature. They're also experiencing shifting because of soil movement at this particular property as well, which will obviously have a capital cost to Manitoba Housing going forward here at some point. We did go through the modeling for the property. We did feel that given the location of the property and the condition that the income was appropriate, vacancy we're in agreement with at 2.6%. And the expenses were close to what the actuals were at, so we felt that it was appropriate in that regard as well. Again, we've capped this at 6%. Could I be higher given the location of the property? Perhaps. However, we've gone with a common theme in addressing these properties, and we're at a rate of 6% for the subject. It certainly would not be any lower than that. And as evidenced by the decisions that I've presented as well as talked about, 6% is certainly a fair cap rate to apply to the subject. This gives us a final market value of $573,000. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Valderram, any questions of the appellant?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Cynthia?
No, thank you.
Good, thank you. Bob, sorry.
No, none for me, thank you.
Sorry. That's calculating here, okay. Just one quick one, Mr. Smith. Okay. So the assessors at, I'll break this down. The assessors at 73,200 a unit, 10 units. You're asking 57, or yours is 57,300 a unit.
On a per unit basis.
Yeah. So we've got all these condo and apartment developments all the way along Sherbrooke there. Is there some value in possibly turning these into condos? I'm being hypothetical here, but in that
Well,
neighborhood?
Very hypothetical.
Yeah.
And-
I'm just curious.
And we're not on Sherbrooke or
No,
or the
but
main
we're-
road thoroughfare, right?
Yeah.
Which are very different from, once you travel east from
But we're next block.
from Sherbrooke,
We're
yes.
right behind the brand new ones, right? I got
Which
the
is, and I understand what you're saying, but it's significantly different. But beyond that, my main point would be that that's not the purpose of the assessment. We're not
Okay.
assessing
Okay.
what it can become.
And
We're assessing what it is at the date of valuation.
is this considered Wolseley East or is this considered a Balmoral, in your opinion? I know we're kind of
We're on the east side of
Sherbrooke, right?
the Sherbrooke, so you're in that,
South Balmoral.
West Broadway area.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, that's my only question. Okay. Requirement for summary, either party? No, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes 150 Furby Street, and that concludes our hearing. Thank you both for
Thank
appearing.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.